I know a woman from the United States who lives in Japan and individually tutors people there in speaking English. She's also been enthusiastically practicing real love for some time and teaches a 13-year-old girl in Japan whose name is, and I'm sure I'm going to make a mess of this, Sawon or Sawon. Actually, I couldn't hear the difference between those two either. She's become quite the real love missionary over there. She teaches the principles to her friends at school, then she tells them when they're not being loving. 13 years old, and she goes around and has the courage to tell people when they're not being loving. That's astonishing. She just really wants to live a loving life at home, school, everywhere. She can see that it makes her happy and affects the people around her in a positive way. That's a lot of courage and sensitivity to what leads to happiness. And I figure if a 13-year-old can do this in an environment where she's the only person her age and has one teacher, probably the rest of us can too. This is from a woman who's been practicing real love for years and has become quite good at it. In the beginning, it was, well, rocky, as it is for most of us, because it changed her whole life. And there's pretty much no way to change your whole life without some bumps in the road. It upset her husband and her children, which is natural, because when you decide you're going to start living by the principles of unconditional love, well, it changes everything. You change the rules, changes the rules of trading and manipulating. She had a daughter, Joelle, who was especially upset at the change and everything, because, you know, by the time a kid gets to be a young teenager, as this girl was, you kind of get used to mutual manipulation. You know, you learn how to manipulate your parents, and they learn how to get things out of you. It's quite the little game. She'd always gotten her way before because she mastered manipulation by 12 or 13, and now she wasn't getting her way. So she rebelled and fought and ran away a couple of times, and goodness, the police got involved, and it was a nightmare. And the mother got a lot of support from people who encouraged her that she was doing what mothers do, which is love and teach. And they encouraged her that she was saving her daughter's life. And the other day she wrote to me and she said, "Breaking news," this is the mother. "Last night, Joelle," this is her daughter now, 2-3 years later. "Last night she asked me if I would be willing to please take her phone from her." Yes, you are hearing me right. The daughter said, "Would you please take my phone from me for a few days, because I'm finding it too much of a distraction from the things that I want to do and that matter more." This is a 15-year-old kid. Would that we would all be so blessed as to hear these words. The mother continues, "Of course, I have removed it from her many times in the past because I could see that it was a distraction, but she's never volunteered to give up her phone. This is amazing." Yes, I would say that this would qualify as amazing. In fact, she's amazing, you're my hero. I'm not kidding. Nobody who's listening could know how many steps you consistently took in loving and teaching, maybe not entirely consistently in the beginning, before you got to learn to be responsible, loving, and teach her to be responsible and loving. And yeah, your daughter's heroic. This all happened because you didn't quit. You didn't give in to the tantrums, the manipulations, your fear of her reactions. Amazing. Every parent, take heart, no matter what age your kids are. You never know when it's going to make a difference. But you can always make a difference by being consistently loving and teaching. Miraculous stuff. Here's somebody who says, how do you give loving feedback at work in the situation where, many of the employees have complained about a particular employee who, well, stinks. You take the employee into your office, or if it's bad enough, you talk outside, and you just explain. We try to make the work environment pleasant in every way. We go to great lengths. We spend money. We get consultants. We have meetings so that the place is clean, so that there's reduced noise. We've had sound engineers in so that there's not reverberation off the walls. We try to make it safe. We go to great lengths, and it's all designed so that people will, A, not be distracted, so that they can do their work more effectively, and B, so that they can enjoy their work, which, crazy, also leads to more effective working. Continuing this conversation with the person who stinks, you say, you do not realize it. I believe that, but you're doing something that's affecting the work environment negatively. And I believe that if you knew that, you would change it. Your smell is unpleasant, just like that. You say, you're going to have to bathe more often. And you don't get into the details. You don't say, how often do you take a bath? No, the smell simply has to improve. Now, I really believe you didn't know, but now you do know. So you really now need to pay close attention to this. I'm going to put a note in your personnel file about this, but in a month, if everything is improved, then I will destroy the note. But we will continue to follow up on this. You have to remember when you deliver a fairly personal message like this, that talking to somebody about how they smell isn't considered more personal than telling somebody that they have, say, a bad attitude, or that they're a bully, or that they don't pay attention and they're incompetent at work. But it does seem to be more personal. No anger. You can't be even the slightest bit irritated. Remember, it's highly unlikely they know they do this. And people tend to smell themselves, a whole lot later than everybody else does. So, no anger. But here's the part people miss. You also don't do it with any degree of tentativeness. Don't look the slightest bit unsure, because if you do, you'll be disregarded. They won't take you seriously and they won't do it. It won't last very long. In addition, and here's the part people miss, if you're tentative, you also look like you're attacking. Now that seems counterintuitive, but when we criticize, we use being tentative as a way to minimize how attacking we're being. For example, how many times have you heard this? Now, even just the pause. The fact that somebody's pausing, you know something bad is coming, and you're going to feel attacked right before they even speak. Or they'll say, but I don't mean to criticize. What's the next word? But, or, now this is a difficult subject, so I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to feel bad. Well, then clearly they're going to tell you something that's capable of making you feel bad. So they're going to feel attacked even if you don't mean to. Or, now I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. These are all well-established preludes to attacks. And so if you say them in an attempt to be nice, you're actually going to put the person on the defensive. It's much better to just be matter of fact. We try to maximize the safety and pleasantness of the work environment, and there's something that you're doing that's interfering with that. Boom. And here's what we're going to do about it, and here's what we're going to do to follow up. Done. Just as you would do in a performance review about anything else, although that's not usually listed on the performance review. I know a woman, Kate, who's been in real love for years. And for years, she's had a strained relationship with her adult daughter, Stephanie, who really gets a kick out of criticizing her mother. The kid was hurt as a child because Kate will tell you she was victim-y and critical, and didn't love and teach, didn't do all this stuff. Well, she didn't learn it early enough to do it like the mother of Joel did. And because the kid's feelings were hurt, well, now that mom is changing somewhat, and actually this actually proves the mom is changing somewhat, because now the kid feels like, well, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to retaliate for all those years that I was hurt. I had 2 of my children that paid me back for years for the times that I'd hurt them. It's understandable that they would, because they don't trust us. We say that we've changed, and they're looking at us not believing that we've changed. And to make things harder, we keep making some of the same mistakes. Sure, we may have reduced our mistakes by even 90%. But if I reduce the frequency with which I punch you in the face by 90%, and I punch you at all, yeah, you're still going to be wary of me. And that's how our kids are. They don't start to believe us until we pretty much get to no attacking, no victimhood, and where we're loving and teaching them all the time. So this woman, Kate, writes and says this. On the Real Love Facebook page, I liked a post. My Facebook ignorance shows through because I emphasize the word because I don't know what it means. I liked a post that somebody named Claire had made. And my daughter, Stephanie, put an angry comment behind my like. I don't know how you do that, but I'm assuming that you just sort of snipe at people when they say like. And then Miranda, another woman, has posted some things to my personal Facebook page. And now my daughter, Stephanie, is posting angry comments after those. What do? I want to be loving. Blocking her comes to mind. I assume that's an electronic block rather than a physical one. But is that just attacking her back? Well, I learned enough about Facebook to know you have to decide, whether you want angry posts on your page. You have to make that decision, irrespective of your daughter. If you don't want angry posts on your page representing who you are, then you block her. And if she wants to make angry, snippy comments, then she can certainly email or text you. It just couldn't be that difficult. We do this every day on our Facebook page, and I get comments from all over the world from Real Love Facebook pages in other countries where people say, would you block this comment? Oh, absolutely. We have a Real Love Facebook page so that people have a loving, educational place to go to. If people post just hate, we remove it. We're not there to spread hate. We would probably remove Stephanie's, but only if it's hateful, not just if somebody is like confused and annoyed that they're hearing something they've never heard before. No, that's when they need to be loved and taught. But if they're just hateful, they're not listening, and they just snipe, and no matter what you do, they're nasty. And poof, you block them and you remove their posts. This is from a woman who's been in Real Love for several years. She said, on a conference call, a coach pointed out to me that I perceive kindnesses shown to me as love coming from that person. And I thought, how could that be a problem? She continued and said, this has caused a lot of mental anguish and fear, disappointment and pain. This usually happens more with men than with women that come and go in my life, although not exclusive to men, and can involve kindnesses from women too. So I need help with this. Now, I asked for some details because I'm wondering what kind of kindnesses could get you into trouble. She said, so for example, when a man is the least bit kind to me, I take it as a romantic interest in me. Well, now that makes sense. Then I start fantasizing about dating and even marriage. And before long, we've, dated and married, and we have children and grandchildren. And then I feel disappointed and hurt if he doesn't show continued interest in me. Yeah, that would be an indication of not having enough love and sense of worth yourself, because without having it yourself, you need it everywhere you go, including from relative strangers who are just nice to you. I know lots of people who go into these kind of fantasies just over somebody closing an email with, well, love you, have a nice day. He loves me. And then they do the whole fantasy. And you need a fantasy kind of loving because you don't have the real kind. She continues, I do this with women too. I feel drawn to a woman as a kindred spirit if she has any ability to listen. So I test her for the ability to accept me when I tell a small truth about myself. If I don't get a connecting response from that woman, well then I feel disappointed and hurt. For example, I opened up to a woman who I had befriended and shared quite a bit about myself with, and she shared quite a bit about herself, or so I thought. So I told her that I felt very close to her, and even said that she was my best friend. She responded that after high school, she doesn't believe in best friends. And I was hurt because I felt a strong attachment to her, and now she's just an acquaintance. Again, simple. You're just empty. You just don't have enough of the real thing in your life, so you're desperately looking for people to love you. And you expect it in either romantic ways, like with men, or at the very least, dramatic and intensive ways, say with women. You have a lot of expectations only because you feel empty. Emptiness is what breeds expectations. Nobody just sits around and decides they're going to expect something from somebody. And then when your expectations are not filled, well, disappointment is inevitable. So the real question here is, what are you doing to fill this emptiness in a healthy way? And if you go to the website, you'll find one entry in the drop-down menus that just lists 10 different ways to find real love. And there are many others that are in the video chats and books and so on. Here's somebody who says, I've started to get overwhelmed thinking about the holidays and all that needs to be done. And I would say to you what I say to anybody who, around Christmas time, one of the more common words that you hear is, I blank to go Christmas shopping. What's the word? Have to. I have to do my Christmas shopping. Well, where is this written? Unless it's a state law that I'm unaware of, why do you have to do anything? You're feeling overwhelmed by the expectations of others and of yourself, expectations you were taught. So it's up to you, but there are, if you go to the Master Index on the website, you'll find at least 2 full blogs on this subject. Why not try it one year? People say, oh, I can never do that. Well, how would you know unless you've tried it? So one year, you decide you're going to scale it way back. Not a little bit back, way back, like 90% back, as in you hang a few decorations and you get gifts for a few little kids, but you tell the adults, oh, grow up. This year we just decided not to do gifts. We did that with people 20-something years ago and discovered that the percentage of people who cared was negligible. I don't know, 2%. So you scale it way back, you do exactly what you want instead of what everybody else wants. Do it as an experiment. She continues, I don't enjoy the holidays because of feeling overwhelmed. Every holiday feels like a burden. And I've felt like this for years around all the holidays. How do I work through this so that I can enjoy them anymore, or enjoy them more? Again, you do what you want. When you're doing what you want, you'll enjoy everything more. Christmas in your family is expected to be a big deal. Decorations and gifts, do what you want. Some people will be annoyed, but those are the people who are never going to love you unconditionally anyway. So what? And if you try it and you discover that it's easier on you and that you enjoy it more, well, why not keep doing it? So it turns out that this particular woman who sent the letter made that decision I'm going to scale it way back, 90% back. And she said, I felt an instant relief. I'm already looking forward to Christmas. I've decided I'm not going to cook. I've decided we're going to cater Christmas dinner. Brilliant, for a large family. Don't turn anything into something where expectations rule your life, ever. New subject. Somebody says, I was texting with someone from real love, and everything was going well. We were talking about her walking her dog for the weekend. Then I received this reply. So the woman, they were texting back and forth, and the woman was talking about walking her own dog. So she texted this woman in real love and said, I thought you might like to join us, meaning her and the dog, and get out in nature since you've been working so hard lately. So the lady who wrote me said, something about that text made me instantly uncomfortable. Was it because it seemed manipulative? Yes, almost certainly. If so, only mildly, less than average for most people's manipulations. So how is it manipulative? The whole reason I'm reading this email from her is that we manipulate so many times a day with other people that we don't even realize that we're doing it. It's manipulative because if there were no manipulation, she would have just said, would you like to go with my dog and I for a walk? Actually, it would be with my dog and me, but she threw in this, like almost everybody does. You really need to go with us because you've been working hard. And there's an implication that perhaps you've been working too hard. So she was pretty much telling you what you should do. Anything other than a clean, direct request tends to be manipulative. And this is still pretty mild manipulation. Most people just keep going on and on. Like, for example, the lady who's decided to really scale back Christmas. She said, wow, she got manipulated a lot. The kid's going, oh, these are adult children. Gosh, we've always counted on you putting on a big Christmas. What's the rest of that sentence? For me. We've always really enjoyed what you do for us for Christmas. What's the implication? Now we're not going to enjoy it, and you're going to be the cause of it, and we're going to be really disappointed in you. She said the manipulative emails were just flying, and she decided just to ignore them. The lady who wrote this email about the dog walker said, isn't it kind of like she's trying to do my thinking for me? Yes, that's what manipulation is. Or she continues, instead of asking for what she would like, she throws in a manipulation so that she doesn't have to risk hearing no. Yes, that's all what manipulation is. Listen to yourself as you make requests. Listen to other people as they make theirs, and see how often justification and rationalization and manipulation are used in making requests. I believe you will be stunned. It's very common. New subject. Here's somebody who says, I want to ask you about condoning behavior. If a married couple came to stay with me, I would happily offer my bedroom, which has the only double bed in the house. But another couple is coming to stay with me, and they're not married yet. Now, I don't care if they're having sex together or not, none of my business, but I can't make up my mind whether I should offer them my room or not, because if I do, am I condoning their sleeping together, and would this be sending the wrong message to my children? Ooh, that sounds like an impossible question. It's not hard. You're not condoning anything. You're just being kind. They're making their own decision. If you didn't offer them your bedroom, the two of them would end up on the same couch anyway, and your children are going to end up asking you that question. They're making their own decision, and you don't have to agree with it. There are people everywhere around us doing things that we don't quite agree with. So should we avoid all of them? If I know, for example, that one of the clerks at a store that I go to hits his wife at home, should I refuse to go to that store? I mean, ridiculous. And yet, which is worse, hitting your wife or having sex with somebody, consensual sex with somebody with whom you're having a lasting committed relationship, but you haven't yet married because, oh, maybe you don't believe in marriage. That's your decision, but that didn't look like a tough one to me. If the kids ask, you just say, you know, there's a whole lot of things that are just really none of our business. It's none of our business what other people do. Now, if you happen to have a particular standard of morality about that you teach your children about whether they sleep with somebody before they marry them, well, then teach them that. Well, and it would certainly be a great opportunity to teach them right there. We don't believe in doing that kind of behavior, but we don't get to control everybody else. And that's my particular approach in our home. I have my own beliefs about a lot of things, but I don't get to govern you. Legal, moral, I don't get to govern you no matter what my excuse is. Now, it does make a difference if it's breaking the law or if it's affecting other people. For example, you can't come to my house and smoke pot, because if you do and the police happen to come and catch me, the laws have been used on many occasions where they could actually just seize my house. Can you come and just smoke cigarettes at my house? No, because it stinks up the house, and Donna just actually turns out really hates it when the sheets smell like cigarette smoke, and then she has to wash them. That affects me, that affects her, and that's neither illegal or immoral. Do I care if somebody smokes outside? Nope, don't care. Do I care whether people sleep together unmarried? None of my business. Doesn't affect me, isn't illegal. He continues, with the couple coming, I don't quite know how to handle the situation. I thought maybe that I would ask them what sleeping arrangements they require. That's perfect. You're asking what they would like to do. Now, if they say, we like to sleep naked together in the living room, yeah, well, see, that would be an example of something that would affect you and the children directly. So, no. But if they say, well, yeah, we'd like to have a room together, and then you want to offer them the only bed big enough for two people, your call. New subject. This is from a woman who was active with her husband in real love years ago, and then mostly disappeared from at least the community, you know, from conference calls and emails and so on. And she wrote and she said, we've been doing well. We hardly argue at all. The trouble is, we don't feel much either when we're together. What we have is totally logistical. We do things together. We volunteer a lot at our church. We eat out. We watch TV. We have family dinners. We do things around the house, but we don't really connect on a deep level, and we just don't feel. We don't talk about our relationship. It's just doing things together. The focus is always on someone or something else. This is very common in relationships. People do things together. It's amicable. They don't fight, so they call that a good relationship. And probably compared to their parents and most people they know who do fight, and where one's an alcoholic and where one abuses the other, it looks like a pretty great relationship. This person is smart enough to understand that just getting along barely isn't enough. She continues, it's about doing things together but not feeling each other, a logistical and superficial relationship. So the obvious question is, what do you do to have a real relationship? Do you talk about what you did during the day? Do you talk about your spiritual life? Do you talk about how you feel about things? She continues, I don't make phone calls. I don't reach out. You told me, I asked you this same question months ago, she's saying to me, and you told me to do that. Make phone calls, reach out, get immersed in real love again, become a member of the website. But I didn't. I don't know why it's so hard for me to reach out. Well, If you can't reach out to people easily, how can you get the nourishment that you need to talk to your husband? Just because it isn't easy, that's the problem. You stop. So the first few times it won't be easy. The first few times I made phone calls to other guys just for some emotional support. I felt like I was asking him out on a date. You can find people, but you do have to make the call. There's whole lists of people on the website who will take calls. You ask me, I'll give you the names of some people to call. And these are people who've been involved in real love long enough that you don't need to call with an issue. All you need to do is call and say, Greg suggested that I connect with you. And they'll take the call from there. So kind of gets rid of the excuse. You get a few names and you just call a few people. You just do it. Why? Because you're not happy. That's why. You continue. One thing is timing. I don't like to talk on the phone when my husband is home because he might overhear something that might be an insult to him. And I do tend to blame him for my emptiness. Yes, you do. And blaming will really hold you back. And you can't use him as an excuse for not making calls because he's gone. I happen to know him. So he's gone usually 5-6 hours every day because he works part-time. Kind of hard to come up with an excuse for not being able to make a call in 5 or 6 hours, you know? And even if he was home all day, you'd still need to make the calls. And if he overheard something potentially hurtful, well, great. At least now you'll be having a conversation where there's some feeling, huh? Don't be satisfied with living kind of dead. You continue. Way in the back of my mind, if he were a loving husband and showed it, I rationalized that I wouldn't be empty. Yeah, easy to blame somebody else, but you have to ask what you're doing. Again, you continue. I feel the man should be the leader of the home. Very convenient if you're the woman of the home. But he sits back passively and waits for me to figure out everything. And I'm tired of figuring out everything. So that's the truth about me. Well, kid, it doesn't really matter whether the man or the woman should be the leader. Things are as they are. Your husband, I know him. He is never going to lead out in this. He's never going to be the first one to reach out for love. He's never going to initiate a feeling conversation. So if you want a richer relationship, you have to be willing to lead. So the question is, are you? I'd feel sorry for you, but that wouldn't help. Guess how many places I go where people don't expect me to be the leader of a conversation. I could complain that it's not fair, but it's just how it is. So you either take responsibility for your own happiness or you're unhappy. You conclude. Anyway, I will reach out to some wise people and coaches, although I don't really want to coach right now, maybe in the future. But I do want you to know that I'm reaching out. That sounded like a really weak commitment. So I would just suggest that it's up to you, but you're the one that has stated that you're not happy with the way things are. Make a stronger commitment, as in write in the calendar right now, call on every single day of starting tomorrow for a week, and make the call and see what happens. People don't usually come hunting you to give you love. You have to show some interest in getting their love. And that's fair, because if people come looking to love you, you may not be interested, and their love just slides off like off a Teflon pan and does no good. If you go to them to get love, at least you'll be listening. So it's pretty reasonable and entirely fair that you be the one that initiates this. I saw a video the other day, new subject, from Zoe, a little 3-year-old. Who knows? She might be 4 now, but no, I think she's 3. Her parents sent it to me. Her dad took the video. And Zoe was telling the story of Snow White. And she was talking about how the prince woke Snow White with a kiss. And her father said, what should he do next? She said, "Stop kissing her." The father said, "Why?" And the little girl said, "Because she listens to the video chats and her parents have read to her out of pieces of Real Love blogs and so on." She said, "Because he needs to see Papa Bear." This is a 3-year-old. This is a 3-year-old's name for me because she sees me on tape. I did meet her, but I'm pretty sure she was an embryo at the time. And the father said, "Why does he need to meet Papa Bear?" She said, "So he can learn to love her before he kisses her." Okay, that's pretty cool. If everybody had that kind of dating sense, we'd have a whole lot less trouble in the world. Here's the miracle of this. Her parents have been teaching her the principles of real love since she was born. They've been living real love since she was born. So, this is her world. She doesn't have to be told what to do or not to do when she gets older. She's been taught from the time she was born. So in her world, you just don't go around kissing guys and letting guys touch you and have sex with you until you're married to them. Whether you believe in that or not, don't really care. I'm just saying this little girl's going to find it much easier to find stable and happy relationships because that's what she's being taught to do now at 3. It's very impressive. This is from a teacher who says, "I have an 11-year-old student who is in foster care. She has 3 siblings from whom she is separated. So the siblings are either in other foster care homes or who knows where, jail, I don't know. She hasn't seen her parents in 15 months. Her grandparents recently told the kids that they were going to seek adoption." Oh, this would be mean. And then they changed their minds. This girl is definitely experiencing trauma. However, she's also showing signs of learned helplessness and victimhood. In class the other day, she just fell on the floor and said, "My life is ruined." And when we talked, I reminded her that her grandparents' choice did not mean that she was not lovable or wanted. She would believe that, now I'm talking to the teacher and to you, she would believe that if she had just a ray of light, of hope, that she could have a source of love, which would then prove that she's loved and wanted. But until she actually feels loved, there's no way she could be any way other than the way she is. She could only believe that she's unlovable. The teacher said, "I think I made the mistake of trying to fix her because when she said that her life was ruined, I tried to reassure her, no, it really doesn't have to be." Yeah, I would say you did make a mistake because you intellectually tried to fix her hopelessness and aloneness. Never works. She didn't want to hear any of that. She didn't want to hear any intellectual talk. That's what the teacher says here. She didn't want to hear any of it. She wouldn't have anything of what I was saying. So what can I say or do to help her realize that her mindset is going to cause a great deal of unhappiness in her life? You're still seeing this intellectually. There's only one way you're going to make a difference in this 11-year-old kid's life. Love her. Show her how you care about her. At some point, ask her if she can feel it. If so, you then get to say, only after you've loved her and she feels it, then you get to say, that proves you're lovable. Because I'm loving you and you can feel it. That changes her whole world. Now, that's a pretty big task on your part, but nothing else but love is going to make a difference to a child. You can talk yourself blue till you're dead. It's the feeling that makes a difference. Turns out that's true for adults too. Here's a woman who says, "My son Harry has just changed school. He was going to a private middle school, and now at age 13, we had to choose a high school. And after carefully considering many of them, we chose one. He does need some support with extra like tutoring, which I have arranged with my ex. And he's fighting me on this. He doesn't want to go to this school, even after we've chosen it. And he just argues and fights with me, and he just grinds me down because he doesn't want to go to the new school, even though it's the better of all the schools in our area. But most of all, he doesn't want to have extra tutoring. He wants to have free time to, guess what, play video games and whatever. Well, he grinds you down, honey, because he can see that every time he argues with you, you wince, or you weaken, or you just plain engage in the argument. All you have to do with the child is react emotionally in the slightest. I sometimes tell people, your child lives for this look. Now, for those of you who are not watching this on camera, I just slightly twitched my eyebrow. That's enough for a kid. They've won because they've succeeded in jerking you around. Now the kid knows that he can control you, at least emotionally. So once he's got a hook buried in you, he just keeps up whatever arguing or anything else he's doing until he gets his way. And I'll bet you $100 in the past, he mostly has. So it's ironic that parents say, why does my child argue with me about everything? Because you taught him that it works. Really, my kids quit arguing with me when they were just little itty bitty teeny things, because they learned that once they started arguing, no matter what they were asking for, if there was arguing, they would never be rewarded by getting that particular thing that they were arguing about ever. So they learned that if you really want to not get something, you just argue. So that took care of that. So what's the solution? You have to be the mother. I know, how unfair. But you see, you chose to bring this kid into the world. He didn't choose to come into your house. I don't know the reason for changing the schools, but whatever it is, you state once, just one time, why he's changing schools, why to that school, and that you made the decision because you're the mother. Now, you might describe the reasons once, but once. And then after that, you're the one that gets to make those decisions. An 11, or I can't remember the age of the child now, should look up. Yeah, 13. A 13-year-old child doesn't have the insight to choose their school. I mean, they're going to choose the school where it's funnest. There's a school that has no homework and they have recess for 6 hours a day. Well, that's the school I want to go to. You're the mother, and it's your job, honey, really. You're supposed to make such decisions. End of discussion. Then if he ever brings up it again, your tendency is to engage in the argument again. How do I know? Because you just said, he really grinds me down. Somebody can't grind you down unless you're unless you're being ground, which means ground upon, which means you have to engage the kid. So if he ever brings up again, instead of engaging him in the argument, you immediately say, as I've taught thousands of other parents, you say, what have I already said on that subject? Well, see, now he's put in the terrible position where it's his job to restate the position that you've spoken instead of restating his. And it's his job to restate the position, not yours. As things are now, he's making you do all the work. In other words, honey, he's gaming you. He's playing you. And he's winning. The mother says, I said, it's happening, and on this one you have no choice. Good words, but you're still reacting emotionally, or he wouldn't be grinding you down. He's getting something out of it. Can't count how many parents tell me, I told my children exactly what you said, and they still kept misbehaving. Yeah, you said the words, but you vacillated, or you hesitated, or you got irritated, or you just reacted emotionally in some way. Mom says, he thinks I'm trying to control him. Control him? Listen to this. We shrink from that word, and that's why he uses it, because he's very clever and he's learned that it works with you. Yes, you are. Darned right you're controlling him. As long as he lives in your house, you do control many things. In fact, the government has given you the power to do it. You're expected to. In fact, if you don't have control over your child, the government will come put you in jail. So, for example, you feed him, you control his feeding, you clothe him, you transport him, you give him housing, all that stuff free, and I'll be darned, that's out of his control. He never complains that you control all the gifts that you give him. Have you noticed that? Does he ever complain about what he gets? No. Does he ever complain about what he gets that he likes? No. Doesn't express gratitude either. He just figures he's entitled, so he whines only when he doesn't get what he wants. You need to grow up. There are many, many things you do get to choose, you tell the kid. And you name them. But where you go to school isn't one of them. And you, as the mother, control whether he, a lot of things, not just the school. You control whether he drives the car because it's your job. You control whether he drinks or uses drugs. So to the kid, I would say, and I have many times, welcome to the real world, baby, because there's always somebody who has the right to control quite a lot of your choices. You don't get to control when you take breaks at work. You don't get to control whether you turn in your homework or not. Other people get to make those choices. Earlier today, a mother called me and said that her daughter who was 15, had been given the assignment of raking the leaves in the yard on Saturday. She didn't do it on Saturday because, well, guess why? She's always gotten away with not doing it. And then she didn't do it on Sunday. And then, well, Monday's school. And so, see, the daughter just, did nothing during the weekend, knowing that when Monday came, she'd have the excuse of going, oh, gosh, Mom, I'd like to be raking the leaves, but I have homework to do. Kids are just geniuses at manipulating us. In this particular case, the kid called from school and said, I won't be home for 2 or 3 hours late because I'm going to go off to the mall with my friends and we're going to play around. And so I'll get to the raking later, which for those of you parents who are still really very innocent and foolish means never. And I said to the mother, does your school let you in the school? Because some schools are really kind of bizarre about that. She said, sure. So I said, you call the school, you tell them that you're coming, you tell them that you'd like security to escort you to the classroom where your daughter is so that when the closing bell rings, you're going to be there. Because the daughter said, when the mother said, no, you're coming home to rake the leaves, the daughter said, you can't make me. And the mother called me to say, what do I do now? My daughter told me no. I'm just chuckling because parents take this stuff from their kids. I said, your daughter will be impressed when there's somebody in a security uniform outside of her classroom. Oh, she started kicking and screaming. And the mother said, you can either go, she's 15 years old. You can go with me to the car calmly and not embarrass yourself, or you can kick and scream and the security guard has my permission to pick you up and take you to the car. So she did go to the car. And on the way home, she screamed and cursed and yelled, but halfway home, the girl broke into tears about how stressful her life is. We all know that when people are in pain, they behave badly. And the same is true for 15-year-olds. If the mother had just let her go to the mall, she would never have learned that the kid is stressed out. So now it turns out the mom's actually going to have some loving and teaching opportunities with this kid. The kid did say, tomorrow I'm just going to avoid the security guy and I'm just going to run away to the mall. And the mother found out from the community police that she can have the daughter arrested at the mall as a runaway and put overnight in juvenile detention. So the mother's going to make arrangements for that. The daughter's going to fight this, but only for so long. Turns out that when kids decide that they really, really don't like the rules at home, they discover uniformly that they like the rules of the detention center, jail, even less. It's a good lesson for kids. This is from a mother who says, after Halloween, our 6-year-old, Robbie, had quite a sack full of candy. So the next day I said that he could pick 6 pieces of candy out of the sack per day, and then put the rest away until the next day. Reasonable, up to you. Whether there's no magical number, 6 pieces of candy per day. Turns out that the American Academy of Pediatrics doesn't have a minimum daily requirement for candy. So the next day, Robbie started whining about that he wanted more than the 6 pieces of candy he was allotted. And I told him that if he keeps whining, he'll have no television for the rest of the day. She did this because I've described, applying consequences to kids. And that one sounds like a reasonable consequence, but it doesn't quite fit 2 criteria for a really good consequence. I'm not saying it's a bad one. If he's going to whine, he has no television. Okay. But they're even better if, 1, the consequence is connected, in other words, makes sense with the crime. And so, for example, if somebody dumps trash out of their car, sentencing them to jail doesn't really make very much sense, although judges tend to do that because we tend to be lazy in coming up with creative consequences. A much more sensible approach would be to sentence the person to cleaning up several miles of, public highway. So connected to the crime, and then sufficiently unpleasant to motivate the child. That's the whole purpose of a consequence, is to be sufficiently unpleasant that the child will want to do the right thing. So let's do the second one first. Whining is a poison way worse than people can imagine, which is pretty much why everybody does it, because nobody sees how bad it is. Nobody sees that whining is terrible, and so nobody stops it. It's become normal. So what do? You clearly, calmly explain that if Robbie whines, he loses the next day's sweets. So see, that's connected to the crime. He loses the sweets that he's whining about. And if he whines again, meaning if you say, well, all right, then you lose tomorrow's candy. And you warn him ahead of time, if you whine for 1 second past when I've told you that you lose tomorrow's, then you lose them entirely. And we give them away. That's what we would tell our kids, but then, of course, we would just eat them. Losing sweets makes sense because, number 1, is connected, and the kid has proven that they matter to him with his whining. He may not care about television. Mom continues. Robbie says, well, if I can have all of the candy at one time, then I'll put up with not having television for 2 weeks. Bingo, which just proves what I said. Taking away television doesn't matter to him much. The consequence has to be about the candy. It has to be something that he hates. So Mom says, well, wouldn't it be all right to let him eat all the candy in one go so that his body and teeth and everything get the sugar hit all over with at one time, and then he can experience the unpleasant side effects of gorging candy. Then he won't ever want to eat candy again. You're very naive. Most children could eat candy until they turned the color of the candy and throw up, and they would eat it again tomorrow. They love that stuff. Wouldn't deter him at all. He'd be going, oh, Mom, don't punish me by making me eat more candy. Brer Rabbit in the Briar Patch. The mother says, I'm thinking this might be unlikely. Any thoughts here about kids and eating candy, limiting the number allowed versus allowing the child to learn the natural consequences? It's all about the whining. It has to stop. I know another mother whose kid had been whining for years, whining about school, studying, television, whatever. This kid was like 12. And she finally did the consequences consistently. After all those years of being told that they have to be done consistently, she finally did what was suggested, and every time he would whine, she would just hold out her hand. That's a perfectly administered consequence. No irritation, no twitch of the brow. She would just hold out her hand, and he had to give her his phone. That stopped the whining almost immediately every time. If he kept whining, then she started taking away other things. And then she wrote to tell me that because she did it consistently, this is a 12-year-old kid. He stopped his whining entirely in how long? 2 days. So when parents tell me, oh, this is so hard, that means you're not doing it consistently. I'm not kidding. No child continues to do something that's stupid if they don't get something out of it. It's a guarantee. So we're the problem every time. We need to love and teach. Of course, in order to be able to do that, as parents, we first have to have found love. Found a love that we trust. Found a love that we remember when we're in these difficult situations with our kids, so that we can then love our children. It works. We'll see you in a week.